With me on Skype is Barry Greenstein playing Razz. How are you, Barry?
I'm okay, Rickard. You're the hardest working man in poker. You're out at 10 at night in Sweden on a boat, and you're still working.
Well, you have to, you have to do something. But it's a good combination to bow with a friend on a boat and be talking to you, to be honest. So
Yeah, you're missing out on the Razz scoop. You're not playing.
it's horrible. It's horrible. I remember last year we talked about it, and this is one of my favorites. What about you? You enjoy the Razz?
Well, some people think playing Razz is like being out at 10 at night on a boat in a cold country. Although it's a little warmer right now, so you look kind of cold there, actually.
It's all right. I'm trying to put my brand out here. Can you see it?
Your brand? Oh, your PokerTube brand? Yeah, I can barely see it.
Yeah, so I'm sort of unsponsored.
Look at this. Start with 3-5-6 against John Monette. I caught King 10. That's no fun.
And he has 4 aces instead.
In the small game, I'm doing real well. I'm 9,300, but we had a guy in here who obviously didn't know what the game was. When you play Razz, and it's not against people who play Razz all the time, whether it's at the World Series or online, you always have some people who you don't think they know how to play the game because they do some really suspect things, and some people you're sure they don't even know what the game is, what the object of the game is.
Mm-hmm.
I had in the small game people capping and drawing dead all the time. That's how I got hold of my chips, although one of those guys is already out.
Yeah.
And even in the World Series in the 50K horse, you'll get people playing Razz calling bet and raise with tens and stuff like that. And although you're there in Sweden, we always used to say when we played with Gus and Patrick and a couple others and David Benjamin, I don't think they play Razz in Europe.
No, it's not. It's not a common game over here.
Yeah, so that definitely was not their strongest game, and so it ends up for someone who's played a lot of Razz like myself. When I play the 50K horse, or this year it'll be the we're calling it the Players Championship. Some people are saying why is Razz in there, and Razz is a nothing game. I'm just waiting for the Razz. I mean, I could almost sit out the other games and try to break even. And the Razz is so juicy. Sometimes the stud high low is too. That that's the place to make money.
Yeah.
Without a lot of risk.
Yeah, I understand. What is I mean, what is the key to the game? What is the main objects and the most important things to think about?
Well, all games have this commonality that is what you call the basic strategy, the starting hands, the hand requirements, stuff like that, and then there's the play. And it ends up in Razz, although basic strategy is really kind of a simple game. For the most part, you start with 3 to an 8 or better. If some other people have low cards, pretty simple strategy. If all the other cards are higher than an 8, and you've got a low card up, you're going to always raise. And it might just be that you're the last low card to act. You're going to always raise and play your board. Again, that's a simple part of the basic strategy. But once you've got that part, and most people seem to have pretty bad basic strategies, which I don't think is that hard to come by. But they do. They come in with some weird cards, and they like to say call and raise with face cards. Even like simply in the basic strategy, it's not so bad. If you start with the bring in, which is a big card, and someone raises and you're up against one person, you'll call with 2 to 7 or better in the hole. But you see some people call against 2 other small cards.
Yeah.
In other words, I start with a jack up and I have ace deuce in the hole.
Yeah.
If a small card raises and another small card calls, some people think it's okay to call if you got ace deuce in the hole. You catch one good card, you're back in it, you're even with them. But it's not right to call because if you're up against 2 hands and they both catch good and you catch good, they're going to do what's called whipsawing you. They're going to bet and raise and knock you out of the pot. Or if you take the punishment, you're just giving up a lot of equity. It's a negative EV play, as the young kids like to say.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things that you learn in Razz, and these are all part of the basic strategy. Now after that, then there is play, and there's a lot of kind of semi-bluffing type stuff that we see in other games where you're raising on the come. Where, for instance, The other person has the betting lead, but they have maybe a 9-8. Their best possible is 9-8 low. You're drawing to a 6 with a big card up. If they bet, you're going to raise them.
Yeah.
For a couple reasons. One is you might lock them out on the next card, and you're going to get no action or little action. And the other reason is you have an advantage when you have a big card up and they have, like, say, a 9 up. You have a queen or something up. You are in position. Usually people think of position being relative to the button, who's last to act. In stud games, which Razz is one of the family, position is determined by people's up cards. So you actually are, sometimes it's better to pair than catch a king, for instance.
Yeah.
It might not immediately be obvious, but if my opponent has a king and I've paired 6s, that means for the rest of the hand I'll get to act last.
That's right.
And
That's cool. Yeah, I understand that. So what are we watching here? We have 3 tables that we can see in the picture right now. I'm going to point to the one to the upper right corner. Which one is that?
You're saying where my cursor is here, upper right, the one that's along by itself.
This one to the upper right on your screen now. You have Queen Jack 9. That's the low one, right?
That is, that's where I've got a lot of tips. 9,400. That's the low one. These people are, of course, worse on average.
Yeah.
And then you have the medium, where you're run-of-the-mill players, and I'm only breaking even against them, or I'm down to 4,500.
Yeah.
Although we have a known player, Nora Flom.
Okay.
Is a good player, young kid. I can give away his name; he won't be mad at me. That's crazy, Marco Johnson.
Yeah.
You know about him? He's actually famous for being the guy who was cheated heads up in the AP scandal.
Yeah, that's right.
What he's actually more famous. That's too bad. He's a good player, and we'll hear a lot about him. But he's more famous for that than his poker accomplishments.
All right.
And then here, what usually happens in the high version of these tournaments is normally most of the players at the table, or you've seen them before.
Yeah.
And
so who do we have here?
Well, I'll start here with the Poker Stars pro, Pat Peasant. He's from Canada, good solid cash game player. And so he's, from the point of view of Razz, he's like no help at all. He's not going to be playing garbage. And so, when I say he's an empty chair, it's more, I don't mean it in a bad way, meaning like you're just not looking to get any money from him. You're expecting, there's no reason to play hands. Like sometimes you play hands in any game because you can outplay people. You're not going to outplay Pat. He's not going to give anything away.
All right.
John Monette, I noticed he won the Deuce to 7 tournament yesterday. I didn't get to play in it, unfortunately. It's probably a good tournament. He won the high level of the Deuce to 7. And he's also known for being the guy who played Phil Ivey head up this last year at the World Series when Phil won the Deuce to 7 no limit.
Yeah.
John plays at the Commerce with me sometimes, and he's a good all-around player. But he sometimes is an action player, and Razz will gamble it up, and he can be fun to play with, but he's a tough player. So, again, he's not anyone you expect to get much from. Now, this Beardy guy is a Russian player. It's Lis Moscow. I played with him in the 4 and 800 mixed game and other games. I know him. And when I first played with him, when we very first played in the 4 and 800, he didn't know what Razz was, and I think whatever the Russian translation for Razz is on the screen, it didn't tell him that it was supposed to be about low cards. I remember when I first played with him, he had like 2 kings on board, and I already had the lock for low in Razz, and we got to cap it on every street, so that was nice. Unfortunately, Beardy has gotten better, and now he's a decent player, and you can always tell online when you play with some people. A lot of times they start off inexperienced, and you make a big mistake if you think, well, this guy's a bad player, let's say a year later. Yeah. It's really Darwinian online. What happens, if the guy's still playing, he probably